Powerful international lecturer, speaker, author of this super book, The Divorce Remedy. Would you welcome Dr. Michele Weiner-Davis?
Yes.
Michele.
It's been forever.
I'm buying her Orlando. Okay, now before we get too far into this, seriously, this is not about going after people who've been divorced. We've counseled, you've counseled, it's tough stuff, right? But we're trying to help couples to prevent not only the first divorce, maybe even the second divorce, because there's often even higher rate there.
Exactly.
And so just chill with us, we'll learn with us, grow with us, but for all of you who are married or looking to get married, we're trying to prevent you an awful lot of pain, and we got the expert.
Yes, we do, but you use the term the divorce trap.
Yeah.
And I started thinking about that, and I thought, you know what? All of us in our marriages at some point have felt trapped. I mean, this kind of feeling of like, I cannot take this for another 40 years.
And interestingly enough, it happens pretty early in marriage. You know, the marriages that end in divorce, 50% of them will end within the first 4 years of marriage, which is mind-boggling.
Staggering.
Isn't that staggering?
We are babies in the first 4 years.
Absolutely. So if you've ever been to a wedding and you see people glowing with love for one another, can you imagine that those are the very same people who 4 years later don't want to have anything to do with one another? Absolutely.
And what blows me away, because I say this a lot, but ever since I heard this study, it takes 10 years for you psychologically to go from this selfish I-centered to we. So it's like they're not even giving themselves a chance to understand a we concept.
So what happens is when people start to feel unhappy in their lives, they look around to see what's the cause of the unhappiness, and their spouse happens to be standing there, and they figure if they just get rid of that person, they're going to be happy, and they get a divorce. But again, I wish I had $1 for each time someone either wrote me a letter or someone in my practice said to me, even when they're happy in their lives as they go on, if I only knew then what I know now about what it takes to get my life back on track and to make a relationship work, I could have kept my marriage together. I could have kept my family together.
And you know what? One senior told me, after being married the second time for 25, 30 years, he said this: if I put as much effort into my marriage as I did hiding the affair, I would have had a fabulous marriage.
Absolutely.
You know what? Because there's a sense to which if you work on what you have, because we know the second marriages, they actually fall apart at a higher rate.
That's right.
And so the answer isn't get rid of Bill here. It actually work on this relationship, and that makes a real difference.
The problem with getting rid of Bill is you take your bad relationship habits with you when you go, and you
yeah,
apply them in your next
You
relationship.
trade it for Steve for a whole new set of strengths and weaknesses.
But you still got the baggage of Bill. Drag it along.
That's right. Or
a piece of Bill comes with you.
Or kids.
Yeah, the kids.
That's right.
Complexities of finances
it's
and all.
really difficult to make subsequent marriages work. And so I think what people really need to understand is that if they're unhappy, the answer isn't necessarily divorce. It really is learning the skills they need to know to make that relationship work. Even if your spouse won't go for help, you know, you think you've said everything, you think you've tried everything, you need to go yourself and get help, because I believe in this concept, it takes one to tango, meaning that one person can actually significantly change the relationship single-handedly by changing how he or she approaches their spouse.
Okay, whoa.
That's brave therapy. It is brave therapy, because often is you can only carry one end of the piano. You only do your half of the problem, right?
Yes, but if there are two people dancing and you change the steps of the dance changes.
Well, there's a lot of feet being stepped on.
Whoa. Stop for just a second, because this is too intriguing for us to not go to, because I've said all my life that one person can't make a relationship, that it takes two. So you're going to have to convince me, but I'm open, and I want to hear why it is you think that can really happen. Go to our website. We've got Michele's book, The Divorce Remedy, and we've even got a little teaser of just a summary of her 7 steps on our website. You've got to come back. Let's see if she can do it. I've always said it takes 2 people to make a relationship, but Michele just said one person can tango. So the 3 of us are going to throw this on the table, and let's see what we think.
I will prove it to you. People always say you can't change other people. The only person you can change is yourself. Imagine for a moment you're spending the evening with someone you love, and they're having a really great time. Everything's going great. And for some really strange reason, you decide you want the evening to go downhill. Could you think of something that you could say or do that would trigger change instantly, right on the spot?
No.
Yes. You know, lots of people say, I know in my marriage, if Jim and I are in the car and he's driving and we're having a great time, if I want to affect a change, all I have to do is comment on his driving, and I know how to do it every single time. That's right. And that's what people say. I know how to push his button. I know how to push her button. Then I say, freeze that image. Because if you know how to push your spouse's button in a negative way, you can learn how to push your spouse's button in a positive way.
Okay, but now therapist to therapist.
Yes.
The positive buttons are not used enough for people to get frequently responding in that way. So we push a positive button, and we're coaching people to do this, and they go, what is this? Okay, so then you push it another time, and they go, this ain't real. And it takes a long time for them to believe that there's something really behind that, rather than just, is this a manipulation? What do you want, right? Because we know when the negative button's pushed, we know what happens because it's right there, because there's a feeling of hurt attached to it over and over again, right? And that feeling of well-being doesn't come out of the feeling of hurt very quickly. Okay.
I don't know. Maybe the people in my office are a little bit different, but I think everyone loves to be acknowledged and appreciated. And when people make that shift from pushing that negative button to saying, you know, I really appreciate that you got up early with the kids, or I really appreciate that meal you made, people really love that.
But what I love about what you're saying, and you need to hear this, is you can start the ball rolling. You see,